Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my first sort of monthly wrap up. I am aware that we are now halfway through August, but we're just going to roll with it, and I'm going to stun you all with the 18 books that I read in July. You're also all just going to ignore the fact that my hands are going to be doing a lot of this because I'm not holding my microphone and I've now forgotten what to do with my hands. Let's begin. First up, we had Glow by Raven Kennedy, which is the fourth book in the Plated Prisoner series. I'm obsessed with this series. It is becoming a god tier series for me. The world building that Raven has created, but mainly the character progression from how they are in book one to where they are even now in book four, and I've got 2 books left. I've never read anything like it. I'm just obsessed. Each book is getting better and better. This book I have rated 5 stars, and it is difficult to talk about without putting spoilers in from the rest of the other books, so there's limited things I can say, but what I will say is that this is just a journey of self-discovery for Oren, and I love it for her. I love that she is learning about who she is and what she is, and this book is female empowerment, and King Midas is the worst villain that has ever been written. He gets a visceral reaction from me every time he's mentioned. Just absolutely no, not for me. Oren though, I love her. She's definitely one of my top FMCs. Love her loads. So next up we had 2 Kindle reads. We had Forged in Blood and Born in Blood by Sadie Kincaid. These are the prequel and the first book in the Broken Bloodline series, and they're Sadie's first fantasy series because she usually writes a lot of dark mafia romances, and I'm doing this because they're not really that dark. They're just where they'd fall under. They're just standard mafia romances, but they are a good time. I love Sadie Kincaid's mafia books. They're some of my favourites. They follow a formula, but sometimes that's what you want from a book, and she does it well. And I was so excited to read this series because I love fantasy. So if one of my non-fantasy authors is doing a fantasy series, I'm obviously going to want to read it. And to be honest, she didn't disappoint. It was so much better than I actually thought it was going to be. So Born in Blood is the prequel, and that's set in sort of the 1800s in London, and it's where you first meet Axel and Daddy Dracos. Daddy Dracos is essentially, well, he's the daddy. That's what he is. He is the vampire that turns Axel, and the prequel tells a story of them meeting, how Axel ended up being turned, and it basically ends with they're going to America. The prequel it's a good time. It's a fun time. You get a bit of backstory with Axel, and you hear about how him and Dracos meet, but it isn't essential to the storyline. It's a bonus novella. But Forged in Blood is the first proper book within the series, and I loved it. Born in Blood is set in the current day, and in that one you have Daddy Dracos, you have Axel, you have Xavier and Malachi, who are 4 vampires, essentially giving the illusion that they're moody professor, Daddy Dracos, and then 3 of his students. Within this university, it turns out that 99% of the students are vampires, witches, or werewolves. Each of the supernatural sects essentially have their own fraternity. So Axel, Malachi, and Xavier head up the vampire fraternity. Whilst there, new student joins Ophelia, who is usual. She's mysterious, she's quiet, she's not like the other girls. Obviously, the 3 vampires take a big liking to her. It's a why choose situation. It's a good time all round. No one is left unsatisfied. Honestly, it's great. What really surprised me is the world building that Sadie has gone into. There is a lot more depth there than you'd expect. There's a history and there's a backstory. There's mysterious people that are brought into it that are kind of referenced and you know are going to turn up in the latter books. All in all, just a really good time. So Born in Blood got a 3-star rating from me, and Forged in Blood got a 4-star rating. It was also my book club's book of the month, and for the most part, I think we all pretty much enjoyed it. I think the only ones that didn't went into it not knowing what to expect and maybe thinking it was going to be very different. But for me, really recommend, if that's your kind of thing. I love a white shoes, I love vampires, I know I love Sadie's writing, so for me, it was a non-question over whether I was going to like it or not. I'm definitely going to read the later ones in the series. Cannot wait. Next, we had Hideaway by Penelope Douglas. Again, do you know what? I will say it now. I had a really good month for July with my reading and what I rated everything. When you see August, some of them are going to be a little bit different. But July was a good month. So I'm part of a book club, and one of the girls in the book club is obsessed with the Devil's Night series. Big, big fan. And we're all going for a little getaway in September, and the house that we've rented has a little sauna hot tub area in it. Because of that, she kept telling us we all need to read Devil's Night because there is a sauna scene in book 1. And in June, I read Corrupt, which is book 1 in the Devil's Night series. I enjoyed it. I was like, oh, I'll read the rest because I've said I will do. Wasn't overly bothered. I have a TBR Wheel of Shame, and it selected Hideaway for me. I was really happy with this book, and what I realised was I don't like Michael from Corrupt. Michael can get in the bin. Kai, I love Kai. Kai can stick around. Big fan of Kai. So there's 4 books and I think 3 novellas in the Hideaway series. And the premise of them is that there's a group of high school friends every year on Devil's Night, which is the night before Halloween, I think. They were infamous in their town for carrying out pranks, for being raucous, for throwing these wild parties. And each one of these boys has a connection with Devil's Night for whatever reason. So Hideaway tells the story of Kai, and it's the story of him and a girl called Banks, who is unexpected. She's not what you would usually expect to be described within these books. It was really good. Kai's backstory is a lot more tolerable than Michael's was. Banks's backstory is it's heartbreaking, and within Banks's backstory, you find out a lot about some of the other characters that are referred to within Corrupt as well. This book is dark. Everyone is sort of aware of what kind of writer Penelope Douglas is. I'm going to put this down. And I can see how she absolutely would not be some people's cup of tea. I don't really have a massive urge to go and read her entire back catalogue. I don't have a massive urge to go and read Credence. Some of it, from what I've heard, sounds like it's just shock factor and maybe not the plot in Credence, but I may be wrong. But the Devil's Night series, I am actually really enjoying. My biggest issue after reading Corrupt was that I was worried that every story was going to be exactly the same, just with the names and places changed, but it isn't, and I was very pleasantly surprised about that. Hideaway is a completely different story to Corrupt, and that makes it a lot more enjoyable. I think the way that Corrupt is written, it isn't necessarily the most obvious that there are 4 very different stories to be told, but there very clearly is. And from what I see, each one in the series actually improves itself. I think Penelope Douglas is very good at writing real characters, not necessarily a character that you'd meet in the street, but a character that you think you can meet in the street, and you're invested when you're reading these books. I wouldn't say it lasts with me after I've read it, but as I'm reading it, I am invested. So actually Hideaway managed to get 4 stars off me, which is pretty much because I am now wanting to carry on with the series. I used to have a very in-depth manner in rating my books. There was essentially a formula involved, and I have massively simplified it. And I am definitely not just like a vibes reader, but the thing that makes a 4-star for me is if it's in a series and I want to read the next one, it will always get between 3 and a 4 for me. So Hideaway got 4 stars. Next up, we have The Hunt by Kristin Buoni. I don't have this book in my possession anymore. So the book club that I am a part of are also doing a travelling book club. So we all nominated books, we're reading them, annotating them, and they're getting passed around. And The Hunt was the first book that I got, and it was selected by my lovely Lauren. and we are barely friends after it. That book was the worst thing I have ever read in my life. And I am aware that reading is subjective. And I am also aware that other people in this book club have now read it and actually didn't hate it too much. For me, personally, it was a slog. It was about 150 pages too long. Nothing really happened. It's supposed to be a dark masked romance. There's 3 spice scenes in it. Everything that is set up to be a foreshadowing literally plays out on the next page. And the way anything is set up is very obviously set up. The FMC I found incredibly unlikable. I found her annoying. And I found her a little bit daft, to be honest. For example, she wakes up on a boat. She has no idea how she's got there. She happily takes drinks off a stranger. Things like that I'm like, especially in this day and age, you wouldn't do it. The Hunt is a dark college romance, and it follows Everly, who has moved colleges for a scholarship. She is very unhappy that she's had to move colleges. She moved because her ex-boyfriend was suggesting it. She gets the scholarship. She then finds him in a very compromising position, so she breaks up with him, still has to move for this scholarship, and her only aim when she gets there is to avoid her ex-boyfriend. When she first gets there, she meets Rhett. Rhett and her are inevitably drawn together. Rhett leads a fraternity on campus that Everly's ex-boyfriend is also a part of, so they're friends with each other. And they disagree with Everly's impression of her ex-boyfriend, which causes issues between Everly and Rhett. It's also very apparent from the start of the book, so we're aware of it, but the characters aren't, that Everly and Rhett met when they were children. They met one summer when they were much younger, and they've both sort of forgotten about it by the time they go to university. I just was not interested in this book. It is very rare that I DNF a book. It has to have extreme reasons for me to DNF it. I will very rarely DNF a book because I'm not enjoying it, because I always think, well, I want the closure. I want to see the end of the story. I couldn't have given 2 hoots for how this story ended. It just dragged on. Like I said, other girls in the book club have now read it, didn't maybe dislike it as much as I did, but I just think there are better dark college romances out there. I will admit, I am not a fan of a college setting. I enjoyed Zodiac Academy, but to me that was barely, like, the school was the location, but the college wasn't an overriding thing within it. It was just sort of how they all met. I'm 37 years old. I have no prospects. I'm 37 years old, and I just don't really get enjoyment from college settings, especially not in contemporary books when half the stuff going on, it's just unfeasible. I'm all for having to use my imagination when I read, but if I have to use it that much, make it a fantasy book, kind of where my head's at. I am going all over the place in this. So, where are we? We've got Everly and Rhett, they meet, they're at this college together. Everly then hears rumours of the Hunt, which is a secret society that is known about but not really talked about, and it happens once a year. She ends up in the Hunt, basically. Rhett is part of the Hunt. All this is very obvious from the outside. Ultimately, I didn't like the writing, I didn't like the characters, and I didn't like the story. It got 1.5 stars from me. However, like I'm saying, some people did enjoy it. If you're into a dark college romance, it may be right up your street. I just think I've read better versions of the same thing. I just don't think it was anything new, unfortunately. It didn't reinvent the wheel. Next up, we had Book of Azrael by Amber v. Nicole. This was, I cannot believe how long it has taken me to read this book. I've had this on my Kindle for so long, it's almost embarrassing. And for whatever reason, I just never started reading it. It turned up on the TBR Wheel of Shame, and I was not disappointed. I will go with my downsides of this book first, and then I'm going to rave about it for quite a while. My only real downside of it was the world building, and I love world building in a book. It's my number one reason why I read fantasy. I love the way that world building can give you a whole new political system, new historical background, new people, new races, new species, everything. I love that. I don't think the world building in this book made any sense. So it's an urban fantasy, which admittedly I haven't read a lot of. that may have played some part in it, but it was just confusing to the point that as I was reading it, I genuinely had to ask a question to some of my friends that have read it about whether I'd missed a prequel I should have read first. It was like a bombardment of information with no actual setting. However, that's it. That is my one negative about the whole thing. From about 40% in, she stops the world building, and it is game changing, that book. The characters that she has written, I love a slow burn. I'm quite happy if a 5-book series, nothing happens in the first 3 books. I like the angst, I like the yearning, I like the slow burn. I like it to be a spicy slow burn, like you know it's boiling to something. I don't want a slow burn where it's culminating in just a peck on the cheek. I'm happy with the anticipation. And the slow burn between Diana and Samkiel is, I have never read anything like it. You spend your time reading that book screaming at the pages for something to happen with them. However, it doesn't. And you're also completely okay with that. You don't feel like anything is lacking. The characters, Diana is in her 30s. Samkiel, well, actually, she's 1,000+ years old, but she's 1,000+ years old in the body of a late 20s, early 30s woman. I appreciate that. Samkiel is again age appropriate. My one issue with Samkiel is the way that he's described means that all I see at the start of this book is mental breakdown Thor. But that just adds to the comedy of it, really. I don't think Samkiel is supposed to be as funny as I find him, but I think I find him very funny because I picture him as Thor. However, again, this is another book with incredible character growth. So you've got Samkiel, who is a god whose planet, whose world was destroyed 1,000+ years ago, and you've got Diana, who is a human turned demon, and she is kept in line by the man that turned her because of her love for her sister, who he basically has an eye on at all times. Because of activities that Diana and Caden and the bad guys are involved in, Samkiel ends up putting a firecracker up his backside, coming back down to earth, and literally, and then trying to sort the situation out. In the midst of all this, Diana and Samkiel meet, and what happens is an unlikely alliance. The first thing that I took away from this book is that this is the first true enemies to lovers I have read in so long. I have a massive, massive bugbear at the moment with, I want to say authors, but it's probably not even their fault, it's publishers and marketing firms, listing things as enemies to lovers, and the enemy is a 1-line squabble on the first page, and then by page 3 they're ripping each other's clothes off and having a lovely good time. That's not enemies to lovers. Samkiel and Diana, they are enemies to lovers, and the slow burn between them is written impeccably. It is written in a way that you as the reader can see the undertones, can see the feelings progress, can see the emotions start to change, but it's also believable that neither Diana or Samkiel have any idea that this is going on in their own heads. They don't even know their own feelings. They don't know their own emotions, but it is written so, so well. And the way that it culminates without feeling like either character has just completely given up all of their principles is a thing to be applauded. Amber V. Nicole has written something stunning. Ultimately, Book of Azrael got 4 stars, but I was chomping at the bit to carry on with that series. Book number 7, I think we're on. Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. This is the first book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. Again, I'm going to put this down because my arm's getting cramped. This is the book. We've all seen it. The Black Dagger Brotherhood series, that's so difficult for me to say, is a series that has about 20 books in it at the moment. There's another one coming out in September. There's various offshoot series. There's about 40 books in this universe in total. I've read, I think, the first 7 or so of the Black Dagger Brotherhood a while ago, and I'm now trying to make my way back through them. So the series follows the Black Dagger Brotherhood It is a urban fantasy with sort of paranormal romance in there. The Black Dagger Brotherhood, I'm going to have to stop saying that in a minute, are a band of elite vampire warriors. Within this world, you then have vampire citizens who will be stronger than most of your humans, but they're not really anything that special. And the world that J.R. Ward has built is, I'm going to run out of superlatives, I think, in this video, but it's incredible. There are individual political systems, they've got their own history, they've got their own heritage. The whole thing is done so well and also fits really well into a contemporary setting. I think this is the first proper sort of contemporary fantasy that I'd ever read. The story starts with Wrath, who is the very reluctant king of the vampires, who doesn't want to take up his mantle, but he is part of the Brotherhood. And he loses one of his oldest friends, Darius. Just before he dies, Darius asks Wrath to look after his daughter, Beth. Within this world that J.R. Ward's created, vampires can't be created, they're not bitten, but vampires go through a turning at about 21, 22. So before that, they're weak, they may have health issues, they don't really have any sexual appetite, they don't want anything to eat. The turning is painful, not everyone survives it, and once it happens, you will be basically a new improved version of you. So Darius tells Wrath that his daughter, who is half human, is due to go through the change. It's unlikely that she'll survive it. Not a lot of half vampires will survive the change. But will Wrath look after her? And Wrath looks after her. He is reluctant to do so at first because he's a grumpy little sod. But again, you know where these things are going. Wrath meets Beth. It's love at first sight. They essentially are fated soulmates. Within this series, you've got fated mates, which is my number one favourite trope. I love a fated mate situation. You've got found family. You've got a lot of morally grey characters. It's just a really good time. And again, I wish I had some better words, and I might need to start looking at Thesaurus a little bit. But it is a world that drags you in, and once again, the world building that J.R. Ward has created for you to get so invested in these different political systems and these different hierarchies within these different races, I just think is a thing of beauty. And each book within the series follows a different member of the Brotherhood. So with each one, you're learning a little bit more about the world, you're also learning a little bit more about the main characters, and you're learning little bits about all the offshoot characters as well, who then may come into their own in later books. And I enjoy that. I like that each book focuses on a different person, but you're not forgetting about the other characters. Again, it was a book that I read, and I want to continue with the series. And it gets a 4-star from me. We then had another Kindle read, and we had The Bane Witch by Ava Morgan. I've never read anything like this book. This book is witchy, it's spooky, it's a little bit of a thriller, there's a bit of fantasy in there. It's described as practical magic meets Gone Girl, and definitely get that. It's a standalone, which I was gutted about by the time I finished it, because if this book had been a series, I would be eating the whole thing up. It was so unlike anything I've ever read before. I don't like thrillers. I try and stay very, very clear of thrillers, but this is probably the closest to a thriller that I'm going to get and enjoy it. It follows Piers, who is leaving an abusive relationship. In doing so, she searches out some old family members that she hasn't seen since she was very little, and when she meets them, she starts to learn all about her heritage. She finds out that she is part of a long line of Bane witches, and what the Bane witches do and make very, very horrible men meet their very, very horrible ends. And they're all very, very deserving of it. The book follows her fleeing the abusive relationship, learning all about her family, and coming into her powers and learning just how powerful of a Bane witch that she actually is. Overall, it got 4.5 stars from me. The only reason it didn't get 5 was because it's not in a series. To me, I feel like a 5-star read has to have a world that I've completely fallen into, and I kind of need a series to do that. However, if this book became a series, or if there were any other books written about the other characters within this, I'd be straight away buying it. Ava Morgan is definitely an author that's now on my list, and I want to read more by her. It's thoroughly enjoyable. Two more Kindle reads, Devourer of Men and Devour the Dark by Nikki St. Crowe. These are two books that follow the Vicious Lost Boys series. I loved the Vicious Lost Boys series, big fan. Again, why choose one of my favourite tropes, fairy tale retelling, which I really enjoy, and another one where I just hadn't read anything like it when I first found it. So the Vicious Lost Boys is Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, and it's them and Wendy. Within this series, Wendy is known as the Wendy, and she is always the female child of the Darling family. The trips to Neverland within this story are a generational curse. Each Wendy within the family has been taken by Peter Pan. They've gone to the island for a little bit, basically come back when they've lost the marbles. It continues. Vicious Lost Boys, highly recommend. Everyone should go read it, but we're going to park that over there. The Devourer of Men and Devour the Dark follow Croc and Hook. Croc and Hook really like each other. Croc and Hook's story starts in the fourth book of Vicious Lost Boys, and they have a tension that is dripping off the page. It is so good. They've been rivals for a number of years because they were both competing for an ancestor of the current Wendy, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. At the start of the book, they have basically located where she is, and they both go looking for her. Turns into another why choose situation. So again, you've then got the Wendy with Rock and Hook. Within these books, you find out a lot more about Rock's background, about Rock goes through, and it's a story of redemption, almost, a little bit, and three people having a really good time together. But the story itself works really well into a segue into Nikki St. Crowe's next series, which is a play on Alice in Wonderland, I believe. And that's because that is where Rock and his twin brother Bane originate from. They are from Wonderland. And nothing much is really known about them. But Nikki St. Crowe's latest book has just come out, and it focuses on their backstory. But within these two books, they rescue Wendy from one of the other lands near Neverland. And in doing so, Rock eats a witch who is then slowly killing him from the inside out. They then have to travel back to where they're based within the Neverland area. I think to fully appreciate the Devourer series, you need to have read Vicious Lost Boys. I would really recommend going reading them. They're, again, so good. They are, again, on Kindle Limited. They are quick reads. None of them are going to take you sort of too much time. They're not taxing. They're nice on the brain. And the rest of the series is just great. The Devourer of Men and Devour the Dark both got 4 stars from me because I want to continue on. The next one on this long list, I'm starting to think I need to start reading less each month, is The Throne of Broken Gods, which is book 2 in the Gods and Monsters series. This follows on literally from the moment that Book of Azrael ends, and it is a masterpiece. This one, I'll say off the bat, got 5 stars. This was just perfection. The slow burn is still going between Diana and Samkiel. The enemies to lovers is still there. They're still warring with their feelings for each other. One of my favourite things about this book was something that I don't feel you see a lot of, and it was the time jumps within it. So within this book, an event may have happened, and then it will tell you that 2 weeks has passed, and in those 2 weeks they've been building a city, they've been dealing with the logistics of something. And I enjoy the fact that, unlike in a lot of fantasies, this isn't happening in a 5-day time frame when you're just like, how is anyone recovering from anything that's happened? There's actual emotions going on. People are having to try and recover from things. It is just wonderfully written. It is wonderfully executed. Again, I'm going to keep going on about it, but the character growth for Diana is pristine. She's a morally grey FMC, which I don't feel you see a lot of. And within that, there is a lot of inner turmoil, and it's her coming to terms with the things she's done, the things she's seen, the things that have happened to her. And you can honestly see her growth from what she was to what she's going to be, and her acceptance of her feelings for Samkiel. And Samkiel is just, he is a god anyway, but he is God here. His commitment to Diana, the fact that he is refusing to give up on her even when she has gone way off the deep end. He knows what she's capable of, he knows who she truly is inside, and he is committed to bringing out just the best version of her, but without changing her. he is aware that her morally grey self is never going to change, and it's more how that is acted upon and how it's implemented and how that impacts on her decisions. And you see Diana have a lot of growth as a person, coming to terms with who she really is. And this book has a lot of Diana's internal monologue. And when you look at the reviews, there's quite a lot of hatred for her internal monologue and people not really getting it and people not liking it. I loved it. I loved the way that you could see that there was this part of her that she was trying so hard to batten down, and it took so much for her to come to terms with what is possibly the weaker side of herself, or how she's interpreting the weaker side of herself, that I was just invested from the very start to the very end. And again, I cannot wait to carry on with this series, and it was a very easy 5 stars for me. We then had 6 Scorched Roses, which is the first of the novellas in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I struggled with this one. I was probably 80% of the way through it before I got it, before I realised why this book was integral to the story. And you absolutely do not need to read the novellas within the Crowns of Nyaxia to understand the overall story. But actually, once I realised 6 Scorched Roses' place within the universe of Nyaxia, I was so glad I read it. The intro that you get to Lilith and Bane was so well told. Their backstory for how they both are and their own personality was so well done. It was a really good introduction to some of the other gods within the universe. It was a really good bridging from things that had happened historically that you hear about but don't know much about, from The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and a really good intro into The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. It definitely made it apparent why these novellas are worth it. It got 4 stars from me. I've then gone on to read The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, which I've done this month. Again, it made even more sense as to why this book exists, and it made me very glad that I've read it. It was very helpful in joining certain dots within the story, and it made the world more real. It made everything more fleshed out. It made the characters have more depth, and it gave the universe just another aspect of its story. So 4 stars, and I really loved it. We are getting near the end now, I promise. Shield of Sparrows, 5 stars, straight away, 5 stars. I love this book. This was just incredible. For someone's first fantasy foray, so worth it. Worth every single one of these hefty pages. I've seen so many reviews of this book saying that they DNF'd it or they hated it because the twist was blatantly obvious. Yes, because that's not the twist you're supposed to focus on. The very obvious twist is supposed to be very obvious, and it's everything else that happens in the story that is what makes this so good. I am convinced that Devon Perry is going to be a queen of foreshadowing. I don't know which bits of this book have foreshadowed certain things, but I am convinced that when the other books in this series come out, there are going to be blatant points where you go, oh my god, that's why so and so did this, or that's why that got said. And I think that's what Devon's going to be very, very good at when her other books come out. It's really upsetting. The next one in this series, I think, is the end of next year, because I ate this book up. Honestly loved it. And I ordered it and then watched a YouTube video of some of my favourite creators on a little book weekend away, and half the group gave it either 3 stars or DNF'd it. And I was terrified to read this. I read it in 2 days because I could not put it down. I was so invested. I love the backstory for the world. The FMC wasn't your usual FMC because it actually showed her struggling with things. She wasn't all of a sudden a naturally gifted swordswoman or a naturally gifted archer. There was things she had to learn. There was things she was messing up on. There was things she failed at. But ultimately, it all worked towards her growth and her learning about herself. And I really enjoy that in a book, as I keep saying. I am also a big fan of the MMC in this book. He was delightful. I just cannot wait to continue with this series. And my last actual traditional book of this review, I feel like this has probably gone on for days. Thank you if you are still watching. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, which is book 1 in the Mead Mishap series by Kimberly Lemming. I love this book so much. I have never read anything like this before, and I'm obsessed. It was perfect. It was just what I needed at the time that I read it. It is light-hearted, it is hilarious, there are still all your usual fantasy elements, there's still essentially enemies to lovers, there's a bit of a slow burn, there's Fey world, there's, you know, supernatural creatures, all of this. But it is so, so funny. Multiple occasions, you just get one of the characters going, "You okay, hon?" Which I'm here for. And it was just such an easy read. It's small, it's light-hearted, it felt almost like reading a role-playing game, but in a book. And I did only rate it 3.75, which I think is still a good rating. And that rating was because of the nature of it. To me, I'm always going to give a more all-encompassing book 4 or 5 stars. I need there to be a bit of a deeper connection. This book's not deep. This book is shallow as anything. It is far removed from deep. But it's a good time. And it was so, so entertaining. And it was such a good palate cleanser. And I cannot wait to continue with it. And actually, for cycle 2 of the Travelling Book Club, I've actually picked one of her other books. So not from this series. And I can't actually remember what it's called. Hold on. BRB. The next one that I've chosen, I got abducted by aliens and now I'm trapped in a rom-com. I cannot wait. It's going to be hilarious. And I cannot wait to introduce the other girls in the book club to this style of writing because I don't think any of us have ever read anything like it before. Go pick it up. Again, Kindle Unlimited. Highly entertaining. Really, really good time. And a really good note to leave the month on. And finally, we're at the end of this. And the last 3 to talk about are the fanfics. So I, very recently, literally 2 months ago, got introduced to Dramione fanfiction. So Draco and Hermione from Harry Potter, all having a lovely time. And I fell down a rabbit hole and I'm now obsessed. But there's fanfic etiquette. And the fanfic etiquette is that you don't rate them, you don't review them, you don't print them, you don't sell them. It's all kind of by the people for the people. The 3 that I read were Bloody, Slutty and Pathetic, Come to Claim, and 2 Weddings and a Manhunt. All very different stories. So Bloody, Slutty and Pathetic is post-war. They are trying to repopulate the wizarding community. Draco and Hermione get into a forced marriage. Draco's blood actually relieves the pain that Hermione has from her scar from Bellatrix, and eventually they figure out that they do love each other. Come to Claim, Hermione leaves a abusive marriage with Ron. The fanfic world really hate Ron, and she is very good friends with Theo Knott, who, if you read any fanfic, you'll know he is a fanfic favourite. He's Draco's best friend, and he is very prevalent in the fanfic world. So he offers her somewhere to stay. Turns out that she ends up being Draco's flatmate. She is trying to re-find herself, and in doing so keeps getting taken to this sex club that Theo frequents, and rediscovers a whole new side of herself, and then discovers Draco. It's a good time all round. And then the 3rd one I really, really enjoyed, and it's called 2 Weddings and a Manhunt, and essentially it involves Blaze's stag do that Draco has organised. Theo takes control, takes them to Vegas, they all get really drunk, Draco and Hermione get married, and it's the aftermath of all that. And again, it's a happy ever after at the end of it, but that one is funny. That one, she was in a relationship with Oliver Wood and he cheats on her, and it basically starts with Hermione breaking someone's nose. Hermione's kick-ass in that one. It's just a really good time all round. So I've just been sat here editing and realised that my entire outro for that didn't record. So here we go again. Take 2. They were the 18 books that I read in July. Thank you so, so much if you have stayed to this point of the video. This went on a lot longer than I expected. If you did enjoy it, please like, please subscribe. Please leave me a comment letting me know if you've added any of these to your TBR, or if you've already read any of them, or if you've got any recommendations for me to pick up as well. It'd be really appreciated. Bye!